Welcome to Band Scamps, an in-depth look at albums and releases by West Michigan artists. Hosted by Dan Fisher and Julio Gomez. This week on Band Scamps, Dan and Julio review Oofta by Wicker Basket and No Masters by Brother Wolf.
This is episode 1 of Band Scamps. My name is Dan Fisher. I am joined by
Julio Gomez. Hey, everybody.
We are recording a podcast. We're doing it.
Yeah, finally. We have been talking for years and years about doing a 1v1 podcast. Just Dan, just Julio, and the time is right.
The time is right. And let me explain just so you guys can keep up with us on how we got to right now.
And in case you're listening to this from maybe like 20 years in the future as archival purposes, maybe you don't know what the year 2020 was all about. Dan, run it down.
I'm going to run it down here.
Let's run it down right now.
Let's go back to...
This is a good intro so far, by the way.
This is great.
This one feels good. Let's do it.
Yeah. Let's go back a few years when, Julio, you decided to get into podcasting.
Yeah, and I think it stemmed from we were invited to do a radio show with Ben Davey, and he kind of just let us do our thing, which is always a mistake. To let me and Dan just do our thing, because we kind of just let it loose, and it was so funny. We started doing this podcast, and then eventually I got some gear and did Grand Rhapsody.
And Grand Rhapsody is, I don't know, explain Grand Rhapsody.
It's a free-form comedy interview show, and it's actually fun to talk about what the show is, because the tagline of that show is bringing Grand Rapids to the people. I bring in a lot of bands, artists, we talk, and then I have friends who are comedians sometimes, or maybe people in bands who play characters, and we interview each other. And it's a long format, big improv interview show.
It's a lot of fun, very loose, but also sometimes calculated.
Totally, and Dan's been on it a ton, and it's fun. It's a big ensemble thing, but we wanted something that can just be me and Dan, a special bond.
Yeah, we do have a special bond. Going back even further, I would say I think it's been like 8 years now since I started like playing in your band.
Yeah, that is crazy. You're probably right, and you're the longest person I've played with, I think my whole life. I think my longest
long-time
collaborator. Yep. I think Matt probably goes in there. Matt might, like 10 Clay might actually be bigger because he's done a lot of our records.
That's true.
If you don't know, Dan and I play in one band together called I Believe in Julio, and Dan's in a billion bands. So his musical background, if you don't know, Dan's been in a bunch of shit. So Dan, if you want to list that off, we can talk. Maybe
no, we don't have that much time. Yeah,
we'll list it off. So Dan's been in bands, I've been in bands. So that's some more background for this show too.
So we love music, and we decided that we want to talk about music because we already talk about music, and that's a great kind of jumping off point for 1v1 podcast.
Absolutely. We wanted something that we have in common with, and I think music is it. And on top of it, we're here in Grand Rapids, and we have a wonderful scene here. So we wanted to do something to highlight that. So all of our album reviews are going to be from this region, either Grand Rapids or West Michigan. Maybe we'll expand further into the state as we get bigger.
Which we will get bigger.
Yeah, count on it. We got T-shirts getting made.
Stickers.
Hoodies.
Koozies, yeah. Candles.
Did you say cooties?
Koozies.
Speaking of cooties, one of the things about this podcast is I'm going to give you some context. We're pretty much in the middle, maybe the beginning, I don't know, the end of a pandemic. And 2020 was a crazy year.
That was such a great segue with cooties.
Yeah.
That's great. I love it. We're living literally in a cootie war right now.
It is cootie war. This is the inaugural episode of Band Scamps. We just had a new inauguration with a new president that's hopefully going to, like, I don't know, not be insane and maybe knock this thing out of the world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, at least put it, lasso it in control.
Yeah, let's
throw me like 1,400.
Yeah. Dan and I live pretty close to each other, but we've been, chatting on Zoom and Discord and stuff here and there. And this podcast is actually being recorded 100% remotely right now.
Mm-hmm. Live from my home studio.
So what better time to make a show?
So with that, I would like to take this moment to prerequisite how we want to go about this.
Okay. Yeah. I'm down to talk about that. We probably should anyway.
You like music, you play music. I
Yeah,
like
I do.
music.
Correct.
I play music.
Right.
So we are in the scene. I would say we
Active. Well,
active.
whatever the scene
have
was,
clout,
there was a
maybe.
scene. Whatever the scene was,
Yeah.
or
And
still
so
is.
yeah. And so I feel like we have maybe a moral obligation to kind of bring
Okay.
talk about the scene and bring it to the ears
All right.
because there was no like visual
Well, yeah. Okay.
of bands.
Okay. There's no visual.
Yeah, like we weren't seeing bands. We're not touching new CDs or
No.
vinyl records.
No.
We're not shaking hands, giving hugs,
No.
high fives.
So something that someone told me a long time ago is that you kind of choose your own level of involvement with music. Like you can either be a fan or a casual listener, or you can even produce the music, or you can help other people produce the music, or you can facilitate the production of music. And I think that's really interesting. And maybe like in a way, what we can do with music right now is kind of go over these albums that came out in 2020 in a time where people weren't really making music. We couldn't gather, we couldn't do shows, we couldn't tour.
Exactly. We had to find new ways, become new musicians, become innovative artists, and I think they're out there. And I actually have a lot of faith in our listeners that they are going to want to hear what we have to say, because we're not here to necessarily just, introduce a band. We want to talk about them. We want to discuss them.
Yeah. So you are going to tune into kind of a lofty highbrow. You brought morality into this. There's pandemic. It's life or death. It's music.
Yeah.
There's going to be bands up until even during the apocalypse. There will be bands. Now, people aren't touring. People aren't doing whatever. People are live streaming. Some people are getting together and jamming. Some people are making their quarantine. As I clang my glass.
Yeah. A hard digress there.
And I think that ultimately we're going to talk about the music.
We are going to talk about the music and just my quick musical background. Again, I play in a lot of bands. I have very specific taste in music. And so what I will say about music is 100% biased.
Yep. And I think I have a very long history of music. I'm self-taught. I also have watched a lot of videos on theory. I have a very broad taste in music, but I would say it's also kind of specific.
Julio and I also have like a nice blend of tastes. Some things I like that Julio doesn't, and vice versa. But I feel like we connect a lot in overall appreciation, not just of pop music, but just of music theory.
Sure. Yeah. So we know what we're talking about. Is that what we're trying to say?
Yeah. What I'm trying to say is that I am an expert.
Maybe we don't. Everyone's a critic, and I think that 2020 was such a crazy year, especially for music and performing arts, because it's almost a throwaway year. And I don't want to say that in a bad way, but it's interesting that, like I was saying, there's going to be bands in the apocalypse. There's going to be bands during the pandemic, and people put out music. And unfortunately, I think a lot of this music got overlooked when it came out. And so one of the other things that we want to do in this podcast is go over these possibly overlooked 2020 releases.
Exactly. I think that a lot of musicians, including myself, had to adapt and find new ways to not only create their art, but also how to promote it. And it's hard because you can only have so much of a presence online without having another side to balance it. And so people are missing a lot of things because they're trying to, find other ways to keep entertained or keep their mind off things.
Right. Artists are trying to stay relevant. Artists are trying to keep doing their thing. Some artists aren't being deterred by the pandemic, and maybe they shouldn't be. Maybe they should be. I don't know. So maybe we can get into those kind of topics and more questions like that on this podcast.
Yeah.
You want to get right into it?
Yeah, let's get into it. So the first record that we're going to talk about and review is Oofda by Wicker Basket.
Wicker Basket is from here in Grand Rapids, and they have a long history as well in the scene.
Yep, and this came out November 19th, so a little later in
November 19th? Okay, cool.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
this
I was
came
wondering
out.
when we have a lot of submissions. We're gonna get to all of them. I think we're gonna review every single record. But I was like, oh man, it'd be cool to do it like chronologically. But I think it'd be too much work in advance. So November,
Yeah, it came out November 19.
Oofda, a Wicker Basket.
Um,
Do you know what Oofda means?
I do not know. Do you know?
I looked it up. Yeah, Oofda is it's basically like the Scandinavian version of like the phrase "oy vey."
Oh, that is great.
You know, like the Yiddish phrase "oy vey."
Okay, that's great.
That's probably the
Um,
easiest way to like describe it. Like it's an ethnic like. But I also read that it translates sometimes to "I am overwhelmed."
Oh, okay. That's not the impression I get from the record. Uh, so that's really interesting. Also, to add on to that, the charm of knowing what Ufta means now is only enhanced by the album art, which is just a photograph of a cross stitch
Mm-hmm.
made by Wicker Basket's grandma.
Yeah, maybe the grandma. I looked at that too. I was always curious. I noticed the art, and then when you're on mobile on Bandcamp, you can't really see all the info. When you're on the desktop, you can see it. So I was on the desktop playing around. I saw all that.
So I think that's really cute and charming.
Yep, it's like an embroidery, right, or a cross.
Yeah.
Do you know how to do that? You know how to cross stitch?
I don't, but I am all about.
You're doing some work with textiles, though. I hear.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm out there.
Yeah. You're in the scene now.
I'm in the scene.
You're in the garment district.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about Wicker Basket.
Okay.
Wicker Basket is electronic music.
Yeah. We're gonna talk about the record. We're gonna talk about the band. I think we should talk about the record.
Okay. You want to talk about the record?
Let's just talk. I think we got to talk about these things as records, as standalone things.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Context might be important for critique, but I think we got to talk about the record.
Okay.
There was something that was in my mind that I wish I would have written down. I can't think of what it was, but go ahead and keep going.
All right.
But I don't think we need. I think we need to like talk about this record as it stands. Is that
right.
cool?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So let's talk about.
Otherwise, we're reviewing bands.
That's true. Yeah. So let's talk about Ufta.
Ufta as a record.
Record.
How many tracks? 6 tracks.
6 tracks.
Listeners, if you want to experience this record before you hear our review, go ahead and Google Ufta, Uffda.
Yeah, you can find
it. You can find it on Bandcamp.
Bandcamp, so it's wickerbasket.bandcamp.com.
And if you go in the description of the podcast, we're going to have links and everything in there you can find, or on our page.
Wicker Basket is also on Facebook as well.
So go ahead and listen to that if you want that experience, or if you want us to spoil it for you, go ahead and do that.
We'll do a cappella versions of all of these.
Yeah, so press pause now. Okay, you're back? Okay, you're back. Here we go. That's how we get away with not having to have music on there.
I like that. Yeah, we really hacked the system there.
This is a short record, Ufta.
It is a short record.
Would you call it an EP?
No, I wish there was like a word for like the record equivalent of like a novella.
Is that like the long player? But LPs are like albums, right?
Yeah, LP is long play, and then EP is extended play.
The 10-inch record?
The 10-inch, yeah, or just like
10-inch maxi single,
or maybe like the 12-inch, but like it's only one and a half sides. Like the second side's just like one song, and like the vinyl's just super spaced out.
So I'm pulling it up right now. This is 6 tracks.
Yeah, every song is over 3 minutes.
Okay.
4 of them are over 4 minutes.
Okay, so this is a decent size.
I would say this is an LP.
Did you listen to this record before it was submitted for review?
I did.
Okay, I did too.
Jeremy actually, Wicker Basket.
Wicker Basket is a guy named Jeremy. It's one guy, and he makes it all himself, right? He makes all this music. Does he have collaborators? Do you know anything to your knowledge?
Well, for this record, I don't believe there were any collaborators, but I did just collaborate with him recently.
Okay.
For just something that was just under his personal name.
So perfect. So full disclosure, Dan knows Wicker Basket. Dan has collaborated with Wicker Basket. Take this all with a grain of salt.
Exactly. Wicker Basket has also DJ'd parties of ours.
Oh, yeah. And we are band scamps.
We are band scamps,
so we might be a bit scampy about these reviews. Where do you want to start? I don't even know how.
I think I just want to start with like first impressions. Let's do
Okay.
first impressions because that's
Sure.
where else were you going to start?
This first impressions for me, I really like Wicker Basket's music. I always have. I've always enjoyed it. This to me is a lot of the same good Wicker Basket stuff. I think there's really interesting composition. It's a really relaxed album, I think, compared to some of the other stuff might be a little more dancey, but I don't think any of the stuff ever gets anything heavy. So to me, my first impression of this was like classic Wicker Basket.
I would agree with that. It was just, I wish it would have lasted longer.
Yeah, I think it would have lasted longer. I think even like I guess we gotta be critical and review it. This is a chill electronic album. It reminds me a lot of artists like Tycho. It's not quite so whooshy and like and up in your face. It's a chill album. This is
It's very chill.
Very chill. This is an after hours lounge album. It's heavy electronics. It's heavy hardware, I guess is my
I believe it is all DAW-less.
Okay.
I believe that he actually
why don't you explain that for our listeners that don't, because I almost don't know what that means.
A DAW is a digital audio workplace. So that means a program that you use, a workstation, yeah. So that means a program that you use to record music, like Logic or Pro Tools.
Sure, I use Pro Tools. So that's a DAW, DAW.
That's a program that you run on your computer.
And you're saying that he, to your knowledge, is not using a program like that. Like he's not using like something like Ableton to make this.
I believe not. I believe that he has 1 or 2 units that he uses that are kind of just song boxes. I guess they can produce synthesizer sounds, drum sounds, and he can just construct all songs. I feel like I can hear the hardware on this record. I would absolutely agree.
You know what I mean?
Especially through a headphone listen, you definitely kind of get the analog. But it's not lo-fi though, which I like. There's a lot of like sonic depth. Especially I found like that the low tones had that really nice, like the best way I can describe it is like fuzzy. You know, like when you hear like a bass tone and like, you can like feel it, like it's like that kind of felty.
I felt like it's there's the synths being used on this are thick. They're thick, they're luscious. I think on my first listen, my favorite song that really stood out to me, there's one that's called Days Without. No, I'm sorry. It's called Chapel Perilous.
I had that one. I had that one too.
Track 5, Chapel Perilous, I think was my favorite song on this record.
Mine was actually the last one, Return to Zero.
Okay.
I just like full disclosure, I have been getting into electronic music, so I have been like really nerding out on.
Is that a new-ish thing for you?
Yeah, it is.
Music? Like you mean like even like enjoying it as like listening to it, or just or getting into it as making it?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, I really enjoy listening to it now more.
Okay.
Because I have like that knowledge of like how it's produced.
Okay, interesting. I have a pretty long history of enjoying electronic music. I think it goes back to 1996 or so. I had a friend. It was like basically some of the bands that got me into electronic music was straight up like The Prodigy. Like I remember going to school and like talking about like, oh, this new Prodigy video, and someone turned around and was like, oh, you like that, and gave me like their first 2 albums. Was like, here's like the Prodigy Experience, and here's this other shit. Here's a Josh Wink CD.
Yeah, I think of like
compilations, and then eventually getting on. I remember like that Around the World Daft Punk song got big around my friends, and then like and that had what was that even 97, 98?
Yeah, I think around, I want to say 97 maybe.
Yeah, I love electronic music. I started, Cassie and I started getting into DJing recently, and so we've been. I mean, we when we could party, we'd go to house music parties and all sorts.
And that's the thing is, I think you lean more towards like the house and club background, where I think my tastes lean a little more modern. With like
there's still modern house music,
like but like Fortet, kind of like the more like that's kind of indie crossover.
You like mid tempo-y stuff, I feel like.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I like that and like the Fields.
Yeah.
What else?
Yeah, I mean, I like all sorts of electronic
Mhm.
music, but you're right. I do have more affinity for more party music.
Yeah,
But
like
I
deep
like, I mean, I
house.
like a lot of Jamaican music, and that has a lot of
Hmm.
electronic influence. When I was younger, like the biggest music was like trip hop stuff, and I've actually been trying to find stuff to DJ that is of this. I'm looking up ambient trip hop, and I don't know what they're calling music,
Ooh,
what they're calling stuff these days for
I
like
have
kill
no
sets, but
idea.
I actually had to ask Ben Weisenborn. He gave me some tips on what to search for. I feel like he would know.
Ben and I were just talking about, and Sean Stearns, we were talking about Basement Jacks. Remember
Oh
Basement
yeah, dude,
Jacks?
bro.
Yeah.
That album Rudy is
Yes,
amazing. It's
exactly.
so good. It's still good, man.
It is still good,
It's
and
still
because
good.
what was the main hit on that is
There was Where's Your Head
Where's
At?
It Had It? Yeah, because that samples Gary Newman.
Yeah, and then like probably now the biggest song on it is that Romeo song.
Oh yeah,
The one of the first tracks in there is probably the biggest. It's like a house classic.
yeah. So it's been really fun, like going back to records like that, or
Sure.
DJ Shadow's introducing,
Uh-huh. Sure. I mean,
or even
electronic.
Underworld.
It's the way of the future, man. Like, and
Yeah,
I don't like make a lot of electronic music myself per se, but I do facilitate it, and like I'm trying to, eventually once we can open up, I'm gonna do all sorts of DJ crap. But
exactly.
electronic music is where it's at, and this Wicker Basket album, I think, is a good representation of its genre.
Yeah, I think you can really tell that he does have an appreciation for, that '90s scene.
Uh huh.
But it is definitely more up my alley in that like mid-tempo,
Right.
slow, vibey.
Uh huh. I like it too. Um, I don't know. I'm like, I feel like bad having to get critical and getting but I'm just gonna do it because if people are gonna
Yeah,
submit, like, and listeners, like, I know Jeremy too. We don't know each other
yeah.
well, but I've known him for years. So to be critical, like, what he is reaching for is occasionally not the most exciting thing for me.
I would agree. I questioned whether this is actually his like passion project, like because we've heard him play
Uh huh.
DJ sets and they were a lot weirder, a little more
Sure.
creative, and he seemed to be really into that. And this seems a little more vanilla.
Uh huh. And I think that a lot of us as artists are gonna have that feeling, and I know. I mean, like, from what I can gather from Wicker Basket as an artist, they do thrive in the live setting.
Hmm.
I do too. And this is a thing that I, as an artist, had to come to terms with. And someone told me this, and I had to think about it. I don't even know if someone told me, if I thought of it, but it's really hard to be a recording artist and not record,
Absolutely.
And I think I've said this a bunch of times because even though, like, you and I are branching out in different types of art forms, ultimately we're recording artists, and probably our legacy will be of recording artists, but we can't do that if we don't actually record.
Exactly.
And Wicker Basket actually has a pretty big discography.
He does.
So he's no stranger to putting out records, but I think I would agree that he thrives in a live setting. And that's not to say that this is bad. It's by no means bad. By no means bad. And I think we're going to do like 2 records per episode. And I don't necessarily want to compare the two, but I don't think that we shouldn't either. So maybe at the end of this up, what I mean?
That's a good
Like,
direction that we could maybe there might be a funny correlation.
well, I was there. It's arbitrary. Like,
Yeah,
this Wicker Basket album has nothing to do with the next record we're going to talk about, right?
exactly. Nothing.
But we've decided to review both of them on the show, and I think we should probably talk about them. So
Yeah, there
I
might
think,
be some underlying things that maybe our decision led.
that being said, in my opinion, about it's not always, it's not always moving for me. And you think he's less passionate, and you think he's less passionate about the recording aspect of it.
I think that when he not maybe less passionate, but it's not necessarily his like defining record. I don't think he's challenging himself to like try to find new sounds.
And that's fine, right?
Yeah,
That's what I was, and then I just said like we're going to contrast that probably with our next record. Might as well say it now. Like, contrasting it with the next one is almost a totally different idea.
exactly.
And it's interesting. I don't want to talk too much about, because you guys haven't heard about that next record yet. But this Wicker Basket album is good. It's a great listen. I would put this on if I was doing a video game stream, I put this on. I would drop it. I would play these during a chill set.
Mm-hmm.
I would play them just if you came over and we were playing video games. I'd put it on.
Yeah. I would try to license it for a YouTube video.
Absolutely, yeah, but they'd be great. They'd be great for that. Like, is it moving me? I don't know. There's that track that I said, track 4 on this record. Track 5 moved me, and I could even picture like a rapper on it,
Absolutely.
like Massive Attack, like that kind of rapping.
Ooh,
or
yeah.
even like fast, like like it's this really chill, Yeah, listeners, make sure to check out these albums if you want.
Please take a listen.
Wicker Basket Oofda is what we're currently recording.
Yeah, it's very accessible.
Currently reviewing,
and you could tell that just he had a lot of fun making this.
Yeah,
and I think that translates in a way to like.
Do you think he had fun making it? You just said that you thought that it was not his. It felt like it was less passion.
I think that like it's less passionate in the way of like creating like maybe like meaningful art, but like more as just like I really enjoy putting music out. This is kind of like what I do in my free time, but I'm not necessarily trying to like make a statement about Wicker Basket.
Yeah, this wasn't. It was. I felt like more of the same.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like for better or for worse, it was more of the same.
Yeah, and
I don't even think that's bad. It's 2020. You and I in the band that we play in together actually decided to not release anything official too much during 2020, and we didn't. We have a bunch of stuff on the back burner ready to go, but we decided not to. And I'm not going to make a value call on whether if bands do or didn't was a good idea, because that's up to them. They're artists, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think I maybe like my comments on this maybe because resonate with me personally, just because I've been putting out music this entire pandemic, and I think the music that I'm putting out necessarily, it's not like the kind of music I would want to necessarily put on a record,
right?
Or something that I don't think it necessarily defines me as an artist. It's just like I got into recording. I think this sounds good. It's fun.
And I think that's good. I mean, you and I have often been of the school of, throw it at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. I think, and it doesn't have to be like, he doesn't have to have made, this record doesn't have to move anybody.
Yeah. And it doesn't, and like, exactly. And like, almost because I wasn't moved by it, like I can really just like enjoy it for what it is.
It's great. Listeners, it's a recommend. I think I would recommend this album.
It's a repeater, like you end at track 6 and you go right back to track 1.
Yep. And I think some people are really going to like it. I think that it's sometimes with this kind of music, the repetitive nature of it, because I know, like, I don't know, sometimes I get one of those, like, I know what you're doing, man, like vibe about this kind of music. And that's why, and it's prevalent in a lot of stuff. And I get it in this kind of music often. I like to be surprised a little bit. I like to be moved.
I implore listeners to take a night drive and just put this on and just enjoy it and enjoy, a clear sky, a clear night sky.
I agree.
Turn the heat up, but crack the windows a little bit.
I agree. I'm gonna give it a 75 cent.
75 cent. I'm gonna give it 4 Red Lobster coupons.
Okay, that's pretty fair.
Yeah.
One thing that I think so maybe can I get more critical? Is that cool?
Absolutely.
I think so. Like, I don't know. I sometimes, like, there was only a couple times where what he was doing took my mind somewhere. One thing I like about electronic music is like the inner space of you picturing what the mood of the song is so much different than rock and roll. And it's so personal and yet universal. And some of these sounds didn't take me to places that I wanted them to take me, or they were keeping me in one very specific realm. Like I was acutely aware of the sounds that were coming at me. There was one point, I think in track 1, where almost like a Chinese melody comes in.
Yeah.
And that took me somewhere. And that was like, yes, it was like, It was, you know what I'm talking about?
Mhm.
I don't know. There's
Yes.
like all of a sudden there's like a really Chinese sounding like straight up like from China Chinese.
I had
I'm not being like
with I know you're talking about.
yeah,
Yeah, more
like straight up. Yeah,
like a more like Asian like scale.
it was like China, like straight
Yeah.
up Chinese music.
I think I know you're talking about. I think that's in like maybe track 2 or 3, but it's a
It's in
similar
one of them.
vibe.
It just comes out of there.
But it's a similar vibe to like what Krungman does, kind of.
Uh-huh.
They kind of
It was
mix that.
a pentatonic, and we do some of that like dun dun
Yeah.
dun 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 dun.
It's throwing that minor third in there.
And that took me somewhere. And then I remember, and the hip hop track, the more trip hoppy hip hop track took me somewhere. But I think that, and this is an issue that I have just with hardware based music in general. Is I can always hear the hardware. I can always hear it.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to justify limiting yourself to sounds that are being made by some kooky device when I know that like I can do that too with the touch of a mouse scroll,
Right. And I think like for me, like hearing the hardware was more fun for me because now that I've explored how like synthesis works, it's a little more interesting. And like that's why I can get the impression that this was done on one machine because of like the range of sounds that were coming out and just like the kind of similar styles, filters, tones.
And like don't get me wrong, I think that stuff is very cool. Like I love hobbies, I love specialty shit. There's a band that I love called Joy Electric. They're a Christian band, and they do all of their stuff on like monosynths, no computers, nothing. The guy plays every single track, with his little finger, and it's incredible. But
yeah,
like I wouldn't want to do that. I'm glad someone's doing it.
Yeah,
and I'm glad people are appreciating it, I guess.
That's why I liked the last song, though, Return to Zero, because it is just, and this again goes to my personal preference, but I find that like almost like the worse sounding like my electronic instrument sounds, the more appealing they are to me. Like I love
the worse they sound.
Yeah, like I like glitchiness. I like stuttery. I like pitch going in and out of tune.
Like I like that stuff too, but I mean, I'm at some point like it's just I don't know.
I think that's like a musical thing.
It's aesthetic and process, and I do respect other people's process.
Yeah, I think is finding a balance between like the hardware and also the theory, because I think like certain melodies, any like played on any instrument, are gonna take you somewhere. There was just like a physiological reaction, an emotional reaction,
right?
And sometimes like the hardware and maybe the scale or mode just don't match up.
Yep. I mean,
it's like a roadblock.
We're all, as an artist, you're trying to find a thing, and sometimes you get there and sometimes you don't. Do we think that Wicker Basket reached what he was reaching for?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think he's happy with this release?
I do.
Yeah, I think he is too.
I think just the vulnerability of saying, please talk about my music is, says a lot.
Yeah, I'm going to come at anyone who's going to approach us with their things. Listeners, for now, we're only doing submissions. We do know a lot of people in the scene and know records, and there's a bunch of great records. We're not going to try to come at anybody about this because it's hard. And you know what? In Grand Rapids, there is no actual music criticism.
Exactly.
It doesn't exist. It's all music PR, which is like, God bless these people for doing that, but that's not what
we're here to do.
That's not what we're here to do. That's not what artists need only, like I feel like that shit is like all dessert, for artists, and they also need the meat and potatoes or the couscous and asparagus, whatever they eat,
Yeah, but I think that's what separates the criticism is what separates entertainment from art in some ways.
Bro, I can't get anybody to review my record. I've tried to get people to review it and they won't. Like, I don't know if it's because they're like afraid of hurting my feelings, or because they don't get it, or because they just forget. I don't know. Like, I mean, like I'm not going to name names, but maybe if we get bigger, we will. But like, it's the kind of
it's hard.
It is hard.
It's hard
honestly,
for people to care.
I don't blame. I mean, I had to put a lot of consideration into what I'm going to say about this because I don't want Wicker Basket to be mad or our next record to be mad about me, but they also know.
Yeah, I think they know us personally. They know kind of where we're coming from, and my hope is that they will appreciate like a critical view of their art.
Well, I want a critical view of my art,
I do too. And I feel like we've established that relationship with each other about each other's music.
Aunt, when she first saw our band, she told me to take singing lessons. Like, she straight up was like, do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I've never heard this.
Do you know who?
Yeah.
One aunt. I'm not going to name names.
Yeah.
She's got an aunt. And she was like,
that's
just
incredible.
Like, grabbed my face and was like, you need singing lessons.
And I'm like, she doesn't mean it in like a bad way necessarily. No. Like, she's very sweet and very nice, and she loves our bands.
You know what? She stole a T-shirt that night. She was wasted outside. He was wasted outside, and I was like, "Oh shit, that's his aunt." And when it happened, we might cut this from the pot. Maybe we should like bleep out who I'm talking about when I say his aunt. We'll bleep those out. Even that. So
yeah, exactly.
When I noticed Cassie, and I'm like, "Oh shit, that's his aunt," and we go over there to help her. And as I'm helping her, like one of our shirts falls out of her jacket, like
oh my god,
a crumpled up T-shirt, and she was like, "Ugh."
You weren't exactly supposed to see that.
She told me to get singing lessons.
Dang, yeah. West Side.
So, but I was glad to hear that. You know what? After that, I try a little harder to sing better.
Yeah, exactly. Like
ever since then, I'm like, damn. I try to all right, maybe I'm a little pitchy.
Yeah.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to
We're back.
Band Scamps, episode 1. This is the inaugural episode.
I already love this. I'm gonna be honest.
I'm having a good time too. A lot of what I do is often ensemble work. I do a lot of I guess pre-COVID work with bigger groups, groups of 3 or more, groups of 4 or more. Lately, a lot of what I've been doing is just me and Cassie, or me by myself, or virtually, like we're doing right now.
Yeah, so this is a nice change of pace. This is actually something that neither of us done.
No, we haven't done. I was actually talking to Cassie today. I haven't done a one-on-one podcast at all. One time, Cassie and I finished the end of a Christmas episode. We didn't finish because Sarah had to go somewhere, so we did a one-on-one, and it was so fun. We were just on the couch, on the couch with microphones in our hand, just recording. Great. It was hilarious, just like kind of just laying on the couch, kind of cuddling and doing a podcast. It was super fun.
Shout out to Cassie also for being low-key one of the funniest characters on podcasts.
Yes, absolutely.
She is a sleeper, guys. Like,
yeah, I'm trying to get her more involved, but I think that's going to happen once we get more people together.
Her Christmas.
It's so funny. So we're gonna do another record here, and this record
is wildly different from what we just reviewed.
Yeah, and and we talked about this before. It's so tempting to compare these two compare the records that we're going to be reviewing, and I think it's just going to be inevitable. But maybe we'll say that for the end. Our next record is by Brother Wolf, and it's entitled "No Masters,"
and it came out on October 23.
Oh, I love that you have that information.
I just felt like that was like that's pertinent information.
I don't know why I have like this notebook I keep looking at. I'm not writing anything down. So I'm like doing what I always tell my guests not to do is like stop fidgeting with shit.
You're like Alec Baldwin in 30 Rock with the 2 coffee mugs, like holding the 2 mugs. Like, I don't know what to do with my hands.
All right. Our first record is
Our first record is...
It's not our first record. It's the second one.
Oh my God.
That's why I stopped.
Holy shit.
October 23rd. So this one came out before the last one we did. October.
Full disclosure, we do know this band as well.
Yeah, we do. I
This
think it's going to become more likely than not that we know the bands that we're going to be reviewing. It's
And I think that's a
inevitable.
really important element of the show is that we are musicians who are active in the scene, and I think that's a perspective that you don't often see published in media necessarily. And I think so. I think that I think we have a really interesting view, just knowing the artist, knowing their history.
I feel like it's like in journalistic like ethics stuff, you're supposed to disclose like, oh, I have a personal relationship with this person that I'm writing about. I don't know why. It seems pointless, but they do that.
And we are 100% about journalistic.
Are
integrity.
we? I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not at all. I'm definitely a media agitator, so I have no integrity when it comes to any of that stuff. But if you're entertained, keep tuning in. This record's a doozy.
It is a doozy.
Like I actually, it took me a few tries to get to listen to this record all the way. I had to. I think the first time I listened to track 1 and 2, put it down. Then I came back and I went back to track 1 and 2, 3, 4, put it down again. Next day came back to it. So this is it's a record.
That's interesting because I was anticipating to have that reaction, and when I was listening to it, I actually found that I flew through it.
You listened to it all in one take.
All in one take.
That's interesting. That is interesting.
I will be the first to admit that like Brother Wolf and Ben Hunter projects have not always resonated with me on like a musical level.
Same. I think yeah, totally. And I know I brought
Does that mean
up, like,
he's a bad musician? Absolutely not.
No, of course not. Of course not. It's just about what moves you.
Exactly.
Now, like I don't want to get too hard. I think that reference is important, and we know Ben Hunter, who is Brother Wolf, and this is his project from what I can tell. I think he had some collaborators on it, but for the most part, I think it's him, self-produced, made it his own house studio.
The Wolf Den.
And Brother Wolf's been around in different forms. Ben plays in a band called Head. He played in a band called Love Fossil for years. And these are all kind of bands that if you've been around Grand Rapids, West Michigan, you've probably heard or seen.
He is absolutely a veteran of the scene.
Heard of or something. Yeah, absolutely. He's a little bit older than me, and I'm a little older than Dan. So he's been around for a little bit.
But he is one of the strongest supporters of the local scene by far.
Absolutely.
He goes to as many shows as possible.
Yeah.
He's always been nothing but complimentary to me and my music.
Hell yeah. But the thing is, we're not here to talk about Ben and talk about what kind of person Ben is, because Ben's a dope dude.
We're talking about No Masters.
We got to talk about No Masters. And I think that part of what this is challenging, and listeners, I'm glad that you're bearing with us still, that the challenge of trying to not only talk out our thoughts about this, but also give you some concrete criticism and review about this record is going to be a challenge for us. So we're going to get there, I think. But the only way we're going to get there is if we try. And we're super thankful of Wicker Basket and Brother Wolf of letting us review their records.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. Thank you for being vulnerable with us and trusting us. And hopefully some kind of entertainment comes from this. So
here we go. This record, like I said, was a doozy. And I think that there's so much that this record made me write down that from the stop, I mean, it starts with like a banshee screaming or something, right? Like what is
it comes in hard.
It comes in like you got to be in the right mood for this.
Yeah.
Like I just have banshee scream and then a riff. It says banshee scream riff is what I wrote down.
I mean, I hear that.
So from the top, and I have a whole it's pretty chronological how I wrote this down because I had to listen to it, and that banshee scream and that riff right away like makes me laugh but makes me happy. It's like, okay, yeah, and that is from what I know about Ben, and I know him pretty well. I don't think Ben and I are super super close, but I've known him forever, and we get along super great. It sounds like him, and it made me laugh because I was like, knowing what I know about Ben, like that's hilarious that he would start his record like that. But of course,
I mean, the song is called Squad Song.
Squad Song.
So already that's like very on brand for Ben.
Sure. And one thing you notice right away is this is a lyric based album.
100%.
This album is all about lyrics.
And I'm not necessarily a lyric guy, so this was a challenge for me because I had to kind of shift the way that I listen to music.
Did you end up going back and re-listening to the stuff he said, trying to see what he said?
I think there would just be times where certain phrases would pop out to me, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's not something that normally happens when I listen to music."
Right. This is a very lyric based record, and I'm a lyric based artist. I think myself. I'm a word person, so I appreciate that. But it's wordy, right from the get go.
Mm-hmm.
It's wordy. It's heavy. It's rocking. It's wordy.
To me, this is like the definition of rock music, not rock and roll music, but just like straight up rock.
It's hard rock. This from the get go, I feel like you can tell like influence is big in rock music, and it's always a catalog. Like you can tell influences here. You can tell that Brother Wolf Ben is into British vocalist. He's into deeper voice. He's into Bowie. He maybe likes Pulp.
Right.
The focus on the vocal is so prominent, and the lyric thing is so heavy, but it's wrapped in this kind of hard rock idiom.
But with that said, I think playing to the vocals is like a really good, like that's his strength, and he played to his strength.
Yeah,
Ben has a really like big, strong voice.
Ben's got an awesome deep voice.
It's cinematic.
It is. It's cinematic. It's epic. This whole record is epic, for better or worse.
Yeah.
You brought up his vocals being like a focal point. I wish his vocals were more of a focal point.
I would agree. I would agree with that.
From the get-go, this album's it's all over the place. You got a pretty driving riff. You've got from the get-go deep vocals. You've got a breakdown part. You've got a trumpet, Spanish trumpet.
You got some trumpets and saxophone
out of nowhere. Okay.
Which I love. Being
some of the screaming, it sounds like Pujol a little bit. Some of his screaming, like his vocals.
Mm-hmm.
There's influences are everywhere. This album keeps going. Now we start hearing Weezer a little bit. Even,
I heard Weezer too. I'm so glad you said that.
I start hearing Weezer. I start hearing some shoegazy stuff.
I heard a lot of power pop, a lot of 70s influences.
It's 100% power pop.
Like the Knack.
Like, is it catchy power pop?
I thought like the second track, Leave, is like a really catchy power pop song. 100%.
I think this has moments. I think this has really, really good moments.
Mm-hmm. I actually resonated more with the more ballady songs though.
Okay, and there's a few of those.
Like it starts out hard with Squad Song, and then goes right into Leave, and that song I really liked. It kind of reminded me of, remember Joust? It has like a Joust vibe.
You know, they were before my time, I think, or before when I hung out.
Gotcha.
With those people. I do know who they are.
Yeah. It's got that Joust vibe.
Okay. Yeah, okay, here we go. No Masters, Brother Wolf. Yeah, if you haven't heard this record and you want to hear what we're talking about, please go listen to it.
benhunter.bandcamp.com.
So I think we're looking at what? By track 4 or 5, this album does start to slow down a little bit.
Yeah, 4 is like the first kind of like ballady, slow tempo song, and I really like that one a lot. Actually, the next 3, No Master, Skeleton Key, and 619 are like probably my favorites. Because they're all kind of piano based.
What the middle tracks are piano?
Yeah. Or they're more prevalent with that.
Is it Ben playing piano? Do you think?
I don't know.
Like how much of this do you think he made himself?
I think that
it's presented as though it's like I made this all myself.
I think when he says Brother Wolf, I think that's maybe in reference to like the core like Bowie band.
Okay.
So I think Joe probably played bass on a lot of this.
Well, there are some people credited, you know, on the Bandcamp. There are a couple.
Right.
This person here plays on this.
I would not be surprised, if he played all of the things except for the people who are credited.
Okay.
This is obviously like a large passion project for Ben. And
you can tell. Okay. This is so when I was talking about it's a wordy album. The content of this album is really intense.
And it's like it's not abstract at all. It's very like
it's
to the
not
point.
absolutely. There's no abstraction here. This is a political record.
100%. I mean, like one song's called "Solar Panel Revival."
Yeah. The overtness kind of it hits you pretty fast. I think you don't really notice it at first. Then you hear a couple things, and this whole album is interesting to me. I think that I have so much more to say about this one than the Wicker Basket album, and I did not like it as much as the Wicker Basket album. But
I didn't either.
I have way more to say about this. Like, I don't even know where to start, honestly.
I'll say this, that this is my favorite like project album that Ben has put out to date.
Absolutely. I will say this. This is this is a major work.
Yeah. This is real, and it's strong.
And it's epic, for better or worse, like I said, and I'm going to stress that, for better or worse, this is an epic album. And I was not in the mood for it.
You definitely have to be in a mood. And I wasn't expecting to have to be in like a critical thinking mood.
Do you remember when Trump got elected? And I hate saying his name, and maybe I'll just bleep.
Yeah, bleep it out.
We'll bleep him out too. When Bleep got elected, people were like, "Oh, there's going to be some really good punk albums that get made."
That was.
Do you remember that shit?
I hated that so much.
Like, okay,
there wasn't though.
No, not a one.
Not
I
one.
mean, okay, like what was that? What's that one band? Like, fucking, I don't even know. Like, we put out an album that was not very political at all. I don't think our album is about an existential crisis, you know?
Exactly.
Like, what's that? I mean, there's been a couple punk bands, but no one put out the album that was big. You know, I think a couple rappers, the Fuck Donald Trump song was probably the best, the most political song.
Maybe it's a Neil Young record.
I think we were expecting, so there was that climate of like, oh, there's going to be this political thing that happens. And I think that we were expecting that, and it didn't happen. And I was thinking about this today, if I can go off a little bit.
Please.
What we were going to be commenting on was so absurd and surreal that it made no sense to try to approach it from a rational standpoint. As far as, here's what I think, here's my plan of action, who's with me? And
100%.
The last 4 years were so bizarre that the lunatics who were also liars and also evil, but also kind of dumb and incompetent, were in charge. That, how do you attack that? How do you criticize that? So many comedians said, this guy's the death of comedy. You know, the South Park dudes were like, we're not going to make anything about him. We're not going to write about him at all. You know?
Yeah.
How do you make fun of him? You can't.
You can't. And yeah, you can't do that. You can't really even.
How do you criticize him? How do you make a statement against that? So I think what happened was the statements that became made against him became more and more absurd and surreal.
Yeah.
And now let's bring that back to No Masters. This is a very overt and direct approach. So much so that it almost sounds absurd.
Yeah.
And that's wild.
That is wild. That I have to take pause to that, because that's something to think about that I didn't really get to when I was listening. Wow.
So in the frame, so that's what I'm saying. So in the frame that I'm in, and I'm also framing this in my own artistic journey of this whole time. I've done a couple sets, acoustic sets. I did an acoustic electric thing, but I've been mostly doing DJ sets, and I'm picking what music I want to play. And the last couple of months have been very weird. And so the music that I've been spinning has had a kind of contemplative, self-reflective, darker vibe. It's not like everybody shake your booty, let's get some pussy, you know? Like that makes no sense to me right now. Right. It's too absurd. So I've been tailoring what my creative output is to that. And I feel for better or worse, again, this record is epic. Yeah. And so it takes on this epic approach to it. I actually picked up
more on like the songs that were like about personal tribulations. That was those. I think that's like the middle kind of tracks. They have more of like a, you know, his personal struggles,
And there was some of that, and you know,
and I
and
really resonated with that. I thought it was really good and like really on the point and reflective.
you know, and you're right, there was some of that, and I don't know why I didn't notice that as much.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's
That's
getting,
like the fun thing about like doing something like this, so where you do know the person to some extent. It feels extra vulnerable.
totally. It's very much him.
Mm-hmm.
And like, he's a very honest and upfront person. And like, what's good about the political nature of this is that for the most part, I agree 100% with it.
Mm-hmm.
It gets wacky though, man. There is, and
Yeah.
like, and I'm not wacky, but I mean, like, there's a song about like concentration camps in there. I'm pretty sure, you know, about
Yeah.
re-educating people that need to be re-educated, and that's a far out concept, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like that. There's like, okay, now we're getting into a realm of political discourse that maybe matches what we were dealing with for the last 4 years.
Yeah, and then
But I'm somehow shocked by that.
yeah, and to contrast that with, you know, like a Marshall amp is kind of a wild, like side by side kind of like relationship.
Uh-huh.
You know, just like a loud, overdriven guitar, but also a really deep, introspective look at our country and ourselves. Is
Yeah.
in some ways it makes a lot of sense, but in some ways it is very weird.
Yeah, I don't know what exactly it is. Not weird, but
It's there's like
I'm finding it unapproachable,
okay.
or I'm finding it like something is going to stop me from enjoying this. I'm not quite sure what it is.
I think there's like a battle on whether to pay attention to the lyrics or to kind of get lost in like the melody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that. There's like a pulling of each side.
Like, I really applaud his ability to like write what he wants to say, and he just says it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like I don't even know if these songs rhyme. You know, like I'm like trying to think of like I'm trying to sing part of a song in my head, and like, and this isn't like a songwriter like a diss on his songwriting. You know,
Right.
It is what it is. That like he's able to do that. He's put out way more music than I have. You know.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think he's going to ever stop. Both these guys, both him and Wicker Basket, aren't going to ever stop making music.
Yeah, I don't know. It's almost like you know, he's saying these such strong convictions, and it's in a huge chorus, and it's almost like abrasive.
Yeah, like I'm saying. So we have on the one hand this really in your face political message that is very, very literal and very very overt, and
relevant,
and relevant, sure. Talking or current, at least, you know, contemporary.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, you have these more introspective ballads that didn't resonate at all with me. So like, I think maybe I'm looking for a middle ground.
Right.
And then there's just some far out bonker stuff that's like, whoa, and that might turn some people off, you know, really.
Totally.
But I think some people are really going to like this record too.
Yeah, and I think like with bouncing off of that, so I think he touches on both really well. Like he does, you know, touch on political subjects, also personal subjects, but the flow of the overall like story of the album is kind of lost on me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he starts out like, you know, in togetherness, but then like in the middle, it's more about lonerism, and then it's more about togetherness again at the end. And it's a strange journey, and I'm not sure like on a more like musical sonic level it was flowing.
It's a lot. And this was a record that I think you probably remember. I was listening to it and I was like, this sounds, I can hear, I said I can hear the band camp on it. Is that what I said to you? I can Did you know what I meant by that?
I did.
I could just hear the bad compression in MP3, and
Yeah.
Bandcamp's amazing, and they offer amazing service, but the fidelity is insanely bad. When I did a review or a remix for my buddy Linwood, and when it came out, I downloaded it all, and I have a Tractor DJ controller, so I'm like, I'm gonna put this in the Tractor, and it was bouncing so shitty on there. It was
Yeah.
like bad. The hi-hat sounded bad, and like, so I actually downloaded this record so we could listen to it in good fidelity. Did you end up listening to it?
I did.
Files? Yeah.
Yeah. It does make a difference.
Especially so Brother Wolf, just so you know, this record sounds much better on the WAV file version than the MP3 version. I don't know what that means, but that this is a fact, it seems like.
And that's like just on a personal level, like learning how to mix for different just like conditions like that.
Yeah,
like whenever
it's a lot. I don't like
Yeah.
this mix. I think you're right. I didn't even think about the mix, but I don't like it either.
Like I just, like whenever I record and write music at home, I'm listening to like high fidelity headphones or monitors, but that's not how most people listen to music.
No, and this is something that we done in our band is we make sure it sounds good all the time.
Yeah.
Whenever like even I'll break out the headphones eventually, but often I just listen to through my iPhone speaker on.
Same.
And that's it. If it sounds good on there, it sounds good. If I can't hear the bass on there, it probably sounds like crap.
Exactly. So when you were telling me to adjust the bass on my remix, it was because I hadn't listened to it through just like my regular iPhone headphones. I was only listening to it through my monitors, and so I could hear everything much more clear.
Sure, and I think that's what I was doing. Was I was going through every track, and I was like, you know what? Is there bass on this track? I had a question. Is there bass even?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the bass. Well, that probably got to go up.
Yeah.
But he mixed this himself, and that's I know is a pitfall people have with mixing. I don't think the mix is unpleasant by any means, but there was issues that I thought would be fixed by listening to it in the WAV format that were not fixed.
And I think that there's so many elements to that too. There's technological limitations. There is artistic differences as well.
Right.
And there's just like a general learning curve with recording music. It is hard to get right. And that's why we hire our friends to do it for us.
So Ben has been doing it forever and has been recording it forever. And I think that for a home recording, it sounds awesome.
Yeah.
It's huge.
And I think that it's so big. It's just incredibly big.
I think
here's a question that we asked about Wicker Basket is, and the same thing here. Ben is obviously reaching for something here.
Yes.
With this record, he's obviously going big. Did he get there?
I think so. I think like at least like on like a lyrical content, like I feel like the message to me was clear.
It is. I would be too self-conscious to write in this manner.
Same. I prefer more ambiguity in my lyrics.
I don't even know how to start writing this kind of stuff, and I find that fascinating.
Yeah, it's a skill because obviously Ben knows how to write a hook. These are catchy songs, but he also knows how to like generate like a message, and those are like two very different skills that I think he's blended successfully.
It is a good blend. It's a good blend of message and musicality, and I think that's interesting. As far as the catching up to these songs, I do have written down here that these songs are catchy, but not like that catchy. But I think people will probably like that.
Yeah.
And that's a weird thing to think about is that I think people will like that they're not the most poppy songs.
Yeah, I think he really pushed himself to explore different genres, different styles. And I really appreciate that, like, as a listener, just like, there's so many times where a band will put out a record and then they'll just do the same record for, over and over. And it just
that's not the case here. It is similar though. I actually asked Brother Wolf for just because I knew which one was the most recent Wicker Basket release, but I wanted to know what the most recent Brother Wolf was, and so he sent me, and it was his most recent release was actually with the band Head.
Oh, okay.
And it's similar. There's not a whole lot different. I think Head record sounded a little better than this one, maybe. But this one is just it's so big.
I think it's like, to me though, it's more personal than like a Head record. You know, I feel like Head is like, it's like pure like energy, you know, and like I feel like there is like a tenderness to this one, because not only is he affected by just like personal stuff, but also by, you know, political stuff and global conditions.
Yeah. The political angle is super interesting to me because, like I said, we'd been expecting political stuff. And even during this weird time, nothing really political. The vibe is just so uncertain, or was so uncertain, that I feel like that was the vibe, was uncertainty.
Yes.
And so for Brother Wolf to come out with like no uncertainty and no uncertain terms, here's what we think, here's what we want. Also, here's some personal stuff I've been dealing with. And then also, like, you know, power to the people. I got a lot of freaky friends who are cool and different. And then let's end this with a Bowie cover, you know, which we can talk about that too. This ends with 5 Years by Bowie.
But
classic song.
But he calls it 5 Years 2020.
5 Years 2020?
Yeah. And I'm not sure.
Does that bother you?
No, I guess I was just like, it caught me off guard at first because I was like,
is the song not called 5 Years 2020 in real life?
No, it's just called 5 Years.
Are you sure? Yeah, I guess you're right. Okay.
So I thought that was like an interesting thing. So maybe I just didn't listen close and maybe change some of the lyrics.
Oh,
I might have.
You know, I'm not the biggest Bowie fan. So
Gotcha.
so I don't know. I just don't know his music well. I know that song, you know.
Yeah.
And like Ben does a great Bowie. Like
he's insane.
It's great. I wish it was a little less like the original, you know?
Yeah. But I think he's been, you know, singing Bowie for a long time. And I think it's actually really added a really nice like texture to his voice.
Yeah. His voice, again, I wish it was more about his voice. I would love to I would work with Ben and have it be I could imagine even like stuff a cappella. His voice is the most interesting part.
Yeah.
So much more than anything else that I feel like attention or devotion to anything else in the music is a little bit of a waste of time.
I would actually agree with that. Yeah, I see what you mean.
And I think it suffers because of its lack of attention.
Yeah.
Even though it's obviously he's singing way on pitch, he's got a great like timbre to his voice. He's got a great color. I just I think of like vocalists, like someone like Bjork or like Auntie and the Johnsons. Or like whatever, Radiohead, you know, where it's like there's so much on the voice.
Right.
That's what I want to see.
And I think maybe that's just a case of, you know, the Wolf Den is just, you know, he was recording a record. So, you know, he was focusing on a lot of different things.
And there's time for, like, he can do that. This record doesn't have to be that. And what I wish it was is pretty irrelevant, but you know what I mean? Like, it's like I just, there's things that I wish.
That's your takeaway from it. And I think like that's a valuable piece of information as like an artist is what someone is drawn to in a record.
And he's a fine guitar player, you know, it's fine. The drumming's fine, you know, but like whatever, it's drumming, it's guitar playing.
Exactly. But yeah, it's not necessarily about like, you know, exploring new sonic possibilities. It's about the lyrics.
Yeah. And overall, like I said, you know, we are reviewing records, and like I know a couple times, I think even with the Wicker Basket, we got a little derailed early on because I was like, you know, I want to talk about these records. That's right, because they're recording artists, right? I can talk about them as a band, but I'm not trying to point out to people who their new favorite band should be.
Right, and we, you know, at the end of the day, have no authority to like really speak upon like a band.
Like, who cares what we think? Yeah, and who cares what we think about this record too? Hopefully, people enjoy our take on it, and it makes you think. But I think that ultimately these are records that both of them came out during a time that's very weird, and they both have very different takes on that time. And now maybe we can get to the part of the show where we can compare the two records.
Yeah. Julio, why don't we start with you?
Okay. So I have written down here, like, don't compare the two albums, but do it anyway.
It says do it anyway.
Yeah, I said don't compare the two albums, but do it anyway. So Dan, what I think is, to me, I even though the Wicker Basket record is way more simple and I would even say less interesting, I enjoyed it more than No Masters. Like Oofda to me, I think was I could see myself putting on more than I could the Brother Wolf record. I'd totally be down to see this record performed live.
Oh, I bet it would be epic.
It'd be hilarious. I would.
Yeah.
I would learn the words just because it sounds fun. You know.
Yeah. I think like
whereas the Wicker Basket record performed to me would kind of just be like, oh, this is a chill time.
Yeah, I mean, like Wicker Basket, it's a very like accessible, like non-committal listen. With No Masters, it is, it's asking for the listener to really kind of pay attention. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's like a cool quality for a lot of records.
I think that No Masters is going to be, a lot of people are going to enjoy it. I think people are going to really not like it as well. And that's like, that's a hard thing to say, but honestly, the longer we talk, the more detached I get from emotion to these artists. You know, I don't know. Is that
totally? Yeah. No, I mean, but that's like with any record though. Sure. You know, like I'm sure people feel that way about our records.
Oh, I'm sure. I don't think that people even like our stuff that much. I think some people really do like it, but I think some people,
like I
don't know.
From what I've heard, I don't think anyone really likes our band.
Yes.
like if I'm being completely, I don't necessarily think that anyone actually likes our band. People come for the banter. They've explicitly said that to us. Like Tom Engelman, he's like, I come for the banter.
Yeah. Well, I can say that our listeners keep going up monthly. Our monthly listeners keep going up on Spotify. So we're doing something right.
We're doing something right. We play punk rock music, but no punk rock bands like us.
No.
So I don't know. If you guys have the answer to how to make likable music, please drop us an email. We have an email.
That's the biggest challenge. That's all we're all trying to do. And so like if No Masters doesn't move me, so what? Like
exactly.
Like, well, or whatever, or if Oofda doesn't move me, but No Masters does move me, more than Oofda did, but I liked Oofda more.
Exactly. Like it's like any other piece of art. You go through a museum, not every painting is going to move you, and not every painting should move you. Because that means you're not listening or looking at it and critical, or you're not trying to appreciate it.
And furthermore, these records have absolutely nothing to do with each other. Absolutely. Outside of
Grand Rapids artists.
Yeah, Grand Rapids.
And that we have talked about them now.
A couple things I did like Grand Rapids-y. There was on that Brother Wolf album, there's a track on there that really has that GR psych rock sound. Track 5. Did you notice it?
I did notice that. I think it's the vocals, like the tin can.
It kind of just came in like, damn.
Yeah.
And it just has that like Matt 10 Clay, like Heaters, like it has the GR psych rock sound. It had it. And like, I don't know what that is, but that was cool. That
also remember
that brought me back in a little bit.
That sound, and that's funny because that sound didn't used to always exist in Grand Rapids.
No, it's like a co-opted like Bay Area 90s.
It's just so fun, because like the mini cycles of Grand Rapids music is like very interesting to me.
But you have like I could lump like that sound. You have like Howlers, which you play with. I think Coffin Problem fits in that a little bit. I think Heaters, I think Haunted Leather back in the day kind of fit into that.
Oh yeah.
Susie's to a certain extent, had that vibe. Yeah,
it was just that kind of like surfy sound was really adopted by the psych community.
Yeah, and so and that sound is, I think, a typical Grand Rapids-y thing, and so I think it was cool that he included that.
Yeah, and like Ben is a lover of music. He loves
Absolutely.
literally
And
all bands.
you can tell his influences here.
Yeah. He's a really enjoyable person to watch bands with.
Sure.
You actually can see and like witness like the genuine appreciation, which is something that you don't always see in the audience. Just being a performer, when you see someone pump their fist, it feels good.
His like straight up unbridled enthusiasm comes through, and that energy is either going to be appealing to you or it's going to be unappealing to you. I think that it's polarizing. And for better or worse, again, it's epic, right? I'm gonna say epic, and I'm not saying that that's good, but I'm not saying it's bad either. It's just epic.
It's simply like an adjective for the music,
straight up, and like, and for the personality behind the music, and it's and
I bet he would say the same thing about the record. He's like, "This is an epic record."
I think so. Do you think he's proud of it? I think he is.
I think he is. I think he should be.
Yeah, I think this is a major work, and my enjoyment of it, I can really enjoy it on like actually like a kind of like intellectual level, I guess, more than I can on a sonic level. But I'm gonna revisit it. Yeah, there were some songs I really liked,
and that's like the beauty of, again, like having a totally biased criticism show is like I enjoy it on like that level of like knowing who created it. There's plenty of music by my friends that maybe not would have caught my attention, but knowing who they are and what they're going for is that adds to the experience.
Yeah, I mean, is that underselling it though? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
a little bit. Yeah,
like that's what one thing that I always like. I believe that you should like never like you shouldn't try to undersell your stuff or something else. Like it's a band. Like he's a I don't know. I guess I'm not really sure where I'm going with that.
I know what you're trying to say. like that. Like it's
like qualifying it. You know what I mean? Like we don't need to qualify this music. It is what it is, and it can stand on its own. Or
it's just kind of
doesn't.
like a natural thing that I think local music scenes. That's just what happens.
Yeah.
But that's why I think the show is valuable in a way, because I think that it's important to talk to each other about our art, be outside of like a PR way.
Yeah,
I think that it makes us better musicians, and I think that it shows that we are creating interesting content because we can talk at length about one record.
Sure.
That's a really great thing. And it's not just all thumbs up. It's all about like, oh, like we both love music.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't, like our band hasn't had a review that's been more than this band exists,
and it's fast.
And it's fast. Yeah. Or whatever. Or it's like got attitude, or I don't know. Like all you get is a couple adjectives describing what your band kind of sounds like.
Yeah.
When maybe people should know what to listen to and maybe like what to not waste too much time.
Maybe we got to start including lyrics in the liner notes.
Yeah. I feel like with this No Masters record, I kind of wanted that.
It is on the Bandcamp. All the lyrics are posted for individual songs. So if you guys are interested in reading the lyrics while listening, visit the Bandcamp. Again, benhunter.bandcamp.com.
I want everyone's going to try to listen to the music and the podcast at the same time. If you do, you're going to get to No Masters and need to turn us off because there's so many words.
Yeah. You're probably going to turn us off before that, and that's okay.
Yeah. I don't even know how long we've been on for. We've been going for a little bit.
I don't think we have a clock.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. This is the first episode of Band Scamps. We want to take you along with this journey of creating a show that talks about local music that has like conditions, and that has some relevance to you or to COVID, and to just exploring what it means to be in the local music scene and to be a critical listener.
Sure.
but at the same time, know that all this is very arbitrary and our opinions 100% do not matter.
Right.
And that we just talk because we're just filling hot air at this point.
2020 was such a weird year. A lot of records that came out, I feel, are going to get unnoticed. And I think that the best that we can do probably is to try to help promote them by actually talking about what they are.
Absolutely.
You know? And
This
I
is
think
interesting
this
to me.
podcast will probably be longer than the 2 records combined.
I think we've already probably passed it.
That's good. That's probably good. That's probably a good goal.
Yeah.
You could listen to 2 guys talk about records, but a longer time than it takes to finish the record.
That's like that's the music scene in a nutshell. It's just a big circle jerk of men talking about records longer than the actual records.
Listeners, if you're interested in being reviewed by Bandscamps, send us an email at bandscamps@gmail.com.
You can also find us on social media.
Social
My
media.
Instagram is Dan Fisher MI. I don't know if you want to share your Instagram. If not, you're not on Instagram a lot.
Mine's private.
I mean, mine's private too, but like,
Okay. I don't know. You can find me.
follow me. I don't know.
Yeah.
We have a Facebook page too.
Yeah.
And we are planning on making some merch.
Yeah. We'll have some T-shirts.
So
All sorts of stuff.
save that stymie check.
Yeah, do please submit your records. We have a bunch lined up. I think 2 per episode seems about what we can handle. I think if I were to talk about a 3rd record, I'd get tired. So I think
No, I am like critically exhausted,
that sounds good.
intellectually exhausted. But a huge thanks to Brother Wolf and Wicker Basket again for letting us talk about your records at length.
Yeah, thanks so much for
Good job,
for submitting
guys.
those. And overall, I mean, these are 2 records that we didn't give a rating for Brother Wolf.
Oh, Brother Wolf.
Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna say vacuum volume at 6.
6. Okay.
Yeah. Vacuum volume at 6.
I'm gonna give it 3 dashes.
All right.
Like ta.
Right. So take that.
Recommended. I would recommend both these records.
Please take a listen. Support your local scene.
Yeah.
Support artists. And
2020 was a weird year, and we are going to dive right into West Michigan's 2020 releases.
thanks for listening.
I'm Julio Gomez.
I'm Dan Fisher. This is Bandscamps.
We'll see you next time.
This has been a Grand Rhapsody production. Executive produced by Dan Fisher and Julio Gomez.
I saw someone post a meme that was like, it was like that one person who keeps looking at themselves on the Zoom meeting. And I was like, how do you know they're looking at themselves?
Yeah, like
They're
I guess
they're probably looking at whoever the most attractive person is on the screen,
Yeah.
you know? And
I
it was
mean,
so-
you do look at yourself sometimes. You're like,
Yeah, I have to keep myself small because I'll be like looking at myself.
yeah, it's just like, yeah, look, looking in the mirror. That's like natural.
But when you're like in a Zoom class with a bunch of people,
Yeah, it's just like funny. I think there are some like maybe tells of someone who's like checking themselves out.
yeah,
You know, they're probably
Yeah.
like fixing their hair and shit.
yeah, a lot of that, a ton
Yeah.
of hairdo. All right, man.
All right, here we go.